Hello everyone. Today's excerpt is taken from my short story booklet, Echoes of Empyrean, Fates of Heroes, which you can find on Amazon. This will only be a fragment of one of my stories. If you like what you heard, please consider purchasing a copy, and subscribe if you want to hear more of my stories. But for now, let's begin the story. A scream, a cry for help. Erligar heard the voice of his mother from across the world, as though she were mere inches from him. Erligar's eyes shot wide, and he froze as his mother's voice rang in his head. The son of Reknir, the wolf god, now stood paralyzed with fear. If his mother was in trouble, Sophia, his love, had to be as well. The fear that gripped him quickly faded to resolution before the demigod closed his eyes and focused on his home of Wolfheim. Blue-hot embers and ash began to float from Erligar's pitch-black fur. His body appeared to vibrate as the fabric of space warped around him, and he vanished from where he once stood. Confusion clutched him as he did not teleport to where he wanted to go. He now stood before a massive wall of ice that blocked the inclined path between him and his home. His ears twitched and turned, but he heard only silence from the other side of the wall. The Reknir-born analyzed the wall of cold, deducing it must be magical in nature as he attempted to teleport to his home on the other side once more, to no avail. The black wolf's gaze fell to his arms. Cracks stretched along his forearm down to his hands as though the crust of the world was splitting across his skin. A glowing blue magma flowed in the fissures. Raising his clawed hands, Erligar pressed his palms to the cold, crystalline structure. Still, no sound was heard from the other side. In fact, no sound other than the wind was to be heard at all. Even the wolves were silent, the smell of blood lingering in the forest behind the godson. "I'm coming, Mother," Erligar whispered to himself as he focused on his palms. Steam rose as the blue of his arms began to brighten. The ice began to warm and melt at the point of contact. Streams of water began to flow around the Reknir-born's feet as he melted a doorway through the ice. There was no hum of chatter as there normally was, and once enough of the ice had melted to create a doorway, Erligar knew why. The path opened to an immense clearing that abruptly dropped at a cliff on the Black Wolf's left. A stone wall of caves extended from his right, bending to straight in front of him on the far side. Erligar stood horrified as where there once stood many wooden cabins in the clearing, there now rested the debris of what remained. Bodies laid strewn among the wood and dirt. Some looked to be human, others looked elven, but Erligar knew they were all werewolves. Every one of them he saw, he knew. Aliana, his mother, was so kind and loving. Knowing that werewolves were not accepted everywhere, she gave them somewhere they could call home. Erligar could recall nearly every moment they came to call this place theirs. He knew some of them more than others, liked some of them more than others too, but they were all supposed to be safe here. How could this happen? Erligar thought to himself. This is my family's home, my father's home. They were supposed to be safe. Erligar felt only remorse as he thought that maybe, if he were here, he could have saved them. Erligar paused briefly as a question struck him. Where is Mother? In fact, he still couldn't hear his mother's voice. He figured that the wall of ice was what blocked contact with his family, but there must have been something else. The Black Wolf quickly shifted his attention from the bodies of the dead to the caves as he headed straight toward one. Once Erligar entered the cave, it became apparent that his path was blocked once more. Ice stretched from wall to wall, hindering his progress. The Black Wolf surmised that each cave was likely the same. He had neither the time or the patience to melt through it like the first. It was evident his family was still in trouble. The glowing fissures on his legs dimmed as the light moved up to his arms, brightening to a blinding level. Every surface of the cave reflected a luminous blue. Magma began to drip from Erligar's hands. With balled fists, his claws digging into his palms, he raised his arms high. He slammed his fists forward with all his strength against the cold wall. With a thunderous sound, a spiderweb cracked across the ice. The black wolf backed away as his legs began to glow again. Charging forward, he shattered the ice construct. Though everything looked the same and the transition was seamless, Erligar knew he'd passed into the pocket dimension that held his home, Wolfheim. Instantly, the fur on his neck stood at attention as his eardrums were pierced by screams of agony and fear. The very unique scent of the realm flooded the black wolf's nostrils. With it, however, came the pungent smell of death and the tingling sensation of cold. He booked it toward the light he saw in front of him, the exit of the cave. The tunnels opened to a clearing, ending with a massive decline. An immense valley stretched out for miles before the black wolf, with mountains at its every edge. A layer of frost now covered the land that once shined green, and the sky was shrouded by gray and a light snowfall. Screams and the sounds of battle echoed across the hills, centered in the fog-shrouded forests below. "Mother would take everyone to my father's stronghold," Erligar thought before leaping from the top of the hill. "I'm going to stop this." Using his hands to catch his descent down the mountain, Erligar propelled himself on all fours. Once he reached the bottom and entered the forest, he could see that the plant life was succumbing to the bitter cold. "My home,"